All right, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully everything is going to work tonight. We are still in the process of getting a few things with the layout changed and whatnot. So anyway, welcome to Super Metroid Strat Chat, episode number 8. My name is Kipp, and I'll be one of your hosts tonight. Our other host tonight is actually our guest as well. Mr. TrueMoss, are you there?
I'm here, Kipp.
Hey, what's going on, dude?
Not a lot. How are you?
I'm doing well. So first of all, before we get into anything speedrun or Super Metroid related, please tell me, I believe you went on vacation recently and you just got back. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went to Mexico for 1 week.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it was great. I didn't take a laptop or anything like that, and I had no Super Metroid time at all.
Yeah.
Or, no email time, like pretty much nothing. For an entire week, which was really, it was nice to be unplugged.
Oh, I bet, man. So tell me a little bit, like, where'd you go?
So I went to, it was like an all-inclusive near Cancun.
Oh, nice, dude.
Yeah, I've never done an all-inclusive before, and yeah, it's nice. You don't have to take your wallet everywhere. Your key is sort of on your wristband they give you, and basically you just kind of take it easy for an entire week, right?
Well, I hope that you got some much-deserved rest, man.
Yeah, I did. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just really busy with work, but fortunately for me, I got one more week, and then we have our spring break. So, so after this next week, I'll have a week off where, I'll have a little bit more time for Super Metroid, but at the same time, not as much as I could have. A lot of times, I spend my spring breaks like taking care of a lot of, like maintenance, like visits to all kinds of appointments, like I gotta go get my taxes done and all that stuff. So,
Sure.
But at least I'll have some time to kind of relax and get that stuff done. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, so tonight is episode number 8. Continuing with what we started last week, we're going to go through more boss fights. Last week we spent a lot of time on Fantoon. Tonight we're going to show some things about Botwoon, and we're going to show some things about Draygon. We're going to limit those currently to more basic strats in terms of like 80% or 100%. We will eventually cover more things about Draygon and Botwoon, like with RBO or low ice in the future when we do some episodes on that. But for right now, we're going to go into the guest interview, and this week we're actually going to interview TrueMoss. So TrueMoss, welcome officially to being the guest interview of this week's episode. You had actually floated the idea recently about eventually, we have plenty of other people we can bring on the show, but at the same time, we haven't really told the viewers at any point much about ourselves. So you had this good idea about us doing interviews with each other. So this week we'll be covering TrueMoss, and next week we'll cover me. So Moss, let me first start with, forget Super Metroid for a minute, forget speedrunning. Like, just talk to me a little bit about, growing up, as a kid and how you got into video games.
Okay, sure. I first started playing Nintendo. I got chicken pox, and my father got me a Nintendo when I got chicken pox.
Oh, nice.
So I was home for 2 weeks or something like that, and that was where it started. That was in 87, 88, somewhere around there. Actually, maybe a little bit later than that. I was a little bit older, but that's where I started with Nintendo. I lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years when I was growing up, and one of the nice things about Hong Kong is that they have all these essentially black market video game areas where you can go and get these multi-cart Famicom carts that have 200 games on them. So I spent most of my childhood playing Nintendo, and I was a Genesis kid. I never got a Super Nintendo until later on in life.
Really?
Yeah, I was a Genesis kid. Genesis was big in Hong Kong when I was living there, and I think it's just at that time I wasn't really thinking in terms of graphics are better on Genesis versus and Super Nintendo is the next Nintendo that has better graphics. I just sort of saw it as Nintendo has graphics that look like this,
right? And
Genesis has graphics that looks like this. So I didn't really think that when I was young that Super Nintendo would be. I already have a Nintendo, and I got my Sega, and they're just different.
So wait a minute. I want to make sure I got this straight. Are you basically saying that Genesis does what Nintendo don't?
In Hong Kong, we didn't have that commercial, so I didn't know anything about that. Yeah,
that's funny, man. So, okay, well, hold on. I got a lot of questions about this, because this is actually the kind of thing that I love talking to people about, how we got started, old memories and stuff. So what was, I assume you got the Nintendo, and it came with Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt or whatever. But other than that, was that the first game that you played when you got it?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember my older cousin coming over and being really good, and I was so young that I was just terrible.
Right.
So it was from the beginning my life was watching older people being really good at the game, and it kind of inspiring me to want to get better.
I can identify with that for sure. So do you remember the first game that you bought or that you got that wasn't, the pack-in game?
Yeah, it was, I got Friday the 13th.
Oh, dude, is that the one where you can't ever tell where you're going or whatever?
Yeah, exactly, that game. Yeah, actually, so growing up, I only had two North American Nintendo carts. I had the Super Mario Duck Hunt, and I had Friday the 13th. And after that, I just got all these multi-cart Famicom carts.
Really?
So yeah, I still have them, but I've got a couple of other North American carts at this point. But those were the two that I had growing up. And it scared the hell out of me. I never played it because I was terrified. I was 6 years old, and it was the wrong. I don't know how I got that game. I think it was something my babysitter left it or something like that. But
dude, that is hilarious because I remember being afraid of it too when I was a kid. Because I was really young when we got our Nintendo. I think I was 4, so I was probably 5 or 6 whenever that game was out. So I remember that too. Okay, so then you got your Genesis. So, talk to me a little bit about, I'm sure you've played all kinds of games over the course of the years. How did you kind of, maybe not necessarily start, what was your first speed game, but more how did you kind of get into speedrunning? Did you notice, growing up, there were times where you would try to, beat things faster just to see, like, even though speedrunning wasn't really like a thing that people knew about? Like, how did you kind of get yourself into speedrunning?
Yeah, sure. I think I remember playing, Mario 3, a lot of platforming games, and I always wanted to play at full speed. Like, I never really enjoyed the parts where it's like you have to take your time and, sneak under and
Right.
all those things. I was like, this is boring. I just love the idea of, like, holding right and just jumping and trying to get through it as quickly as possible. I did it all the time, and I died a lot because of it, because it's just, reckless abandon.
Of course.
But that was something that always appealed to me, that feeling of, like, the perfect run when you go from the beginning of level 1-1 all the way to the end without, essentially stopping. Yeah, so that's, and then I saw speedrunning, and that's, like, exactly what you do in speedrunning.
Exactly.
Perfect fit.
Okay, so I have another question because I've brought this up before, and I know I'm pretty confident that you share a love of GoldenEye with me. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely.
so did you have a Nintendo 64, like, roughly when it came out, or within a year or two of it coming out, like, or did you have it, like, later?
It was within a year or two. I got it. I realized that a lot of these consoles I get at this point where I'm not in school, there was a teacher strike in grade 7 for me, and at that time we had 2 weeks off, and so we got a 64 at that point, and I had friends that had been playing it already. I played a little bit, and then I got GoldenEye, and that's pretty much all I did for the next couple of years.
Nice. So were you like me? Did you basically try to get all the cheat codes by speed running the different levels and, like, run into the ones that were really hard and, like, do them over and over and over again?
Yeah, I remember working forever trying to get archives, which was like under a minute 20 or something like that. And I remember, and of course the big one is the facility.
Yeah, that one's my favorite.
I remember I didn't actually get archives. I had the friend who was really good at them, and he knew the route, and he got it for me. This is back when I didn't even know that you could, if you move diagonally, you actually run faster.
Oh, okay.
So it's a once you learn that, it's a huge step up in your game.
Yeah, big time. That's cool. Okay, so how did you? Let's start kind of transitioning into Super Metroid. Like, well, first let me ask: is Super Metroid the first speedrun game that you ever, like, sunk a bunch of time into?
No. So I started. At first, I was going through a period where I decided, like, I'm gonna start beating Nintendo games. Just beating old games that I beat them at some point in my life, but, like, I'm going to start a list. I'm just going to start, like, just knocking all the games off. And with a couple of them, I remember I wanted to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original Nintendo game. And I was, having trouble getting through it. It's kind of a maze. So I just looked up, I just typed in, playthrough or something like that. And the first video that came up was Feasel running Ninja Turtles at one of the GDQs.
I'm sorry, who's that guy? Who's that guy?
It was Feasel.
I've never heard of him.
Oh, Feasel's
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. Sorry, I did not pick up your.
Sorry. Yeah. Feasel is he's the man.
You watch GDQs,
of course.
So that was the first thing I ever saw of speedrunning, was watching Feasel doing that, and it was just really fascinating. He was explaining how if you press start on the right frame at the beginning of the game, that sets where the Technodrome is. I was just my mind was blown by the fact that, like, people have figured out that where the Technodrome is based off of when you push start at the beginning of the game. Like, I was just like, oh my God, people have really solved video games at this point. And shortly after that, I started looking at just other videos from GDQ, and the one that really stood out to me was Dexter running Batman, and that became my first speedrunning game.
Oh, that's a great game.
Batman was one of the games I had growing up, and I never got very far because it's pretty hard. And there was something in that video. There's a trick in Batman called the wiggle, which is you fight the first boss, and you have this little movement where you move left to right, and it sort of changes the way that when he gets damage boosted, he gets sort of knocked back in a direction towards you if you turn at the right time. And I just remember seeing that and thinking, my God, like, I remember fighting that guy, it would take forever, and he does it in, half a round, essentially. So that was the moment where I realized, like, this is really interesting to me. I'm going to start learning how to do Batman.
Yeah. That's a great game, man. I haven't played that since I was a kid, but yeah, I remember that one being really tough. Now you like, I guess you've learned that one like, I just kind of understand your play in the context of Super Metroid. Like, do you still go back and try to like update your times in Batman or something like that?
It's funny with my old games. The two games I play aside from Super Metroid, I played Batman for a long time, and then I got into Ninja Gaiden, and that was all I did. And then I got into Super Metroid. I remember at first thinking like, I'll never be able to do Super Metroid because it's just so much more involved than these other two games. It's funny because they're all actually wall jumping games.
Yeah.
And each one has a slightly different mechanic. Like how you do the wall jump is different with each one. But anyways, I've tried going back. My problem is every time I play Batman or Ninja Gaiden, I don't feel as in control as I do playing Super Metroid. So every time I play it, I'm always like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And then I go back to Super Metroid and it feels like everything feels right. And so it's hard for me to actually go back to those games at this point.
That's interesting. Yeah, like I remember when I first started learning Super Metroid, somebody had asked me to like do like a playthrough of Zero Mission or something, and like I really liked the game, but I like couldn't adapt. And then when I went back to Super Metroid, I like it felt weird, and I was like, I'm never playing another wall jumping game while I'm like playing Super Metroid because it'll just kind of throw you off or whatever. So now let's talk about Super Metroid. Like, did you ever play Super Metroid casually before you saw a speedrun of it?
Yeah, I only played for a very short while though. I got off of series and then I maybe went like 10 more minutes. And I was just like at that time, that day I was playing, I was just not feeling it. I was like, okay, this is gonna be an adventure and it's gonna take it's like watching, your first time playing Super Metroid is like watching Lincoln. It's like, okay, this is gonna be really slow and it's gonna take a lot of paying attention. And if I'm not in the right mindset to watch Lincoln tonight, I should just put The Office on and watch The Office for the rest of the night.
Right. So then you saw a speedrun of it, I assume, before you like played through it?
Yes, that's right. I think the first thing I saw, the first person I saw speedrunning the game, I think was actually Krauser. He was definitely the person that he was the person I was most interested in when I first started watching Metroid speedruns. And he, of course, was in that amazing race in, I think, 2014.
Yeah.
And he had that great comeback. And I had watched, just like casually. I think I was watching some other video, someone else on Twitch, and then Krauser got hosted or something like that. And that's how I got kind of onto watching Super Metroid. And so, that race at GDQ 2014, it was like, it's still considered one of the greatest races of all time. It's, less than half a second at the end. Krauser makes a great comeback near the end. It was just an amazing run all the way through. And I definitely, I remember at the beginning, Krauser was definitely the person I was the most interested in watching. And then when I saw the rest of the race, I kind of got, I got really into watching Zost after that.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got your stats up here. So let's talk about that for a minute and then kind of cut back to your beginning. So you started running in early 2015, so this means that you've now been running for roughly about 3 years. I've got your times in the 4 major categories, the major no major glitches categories, and you have like really really good times in every single category. So it's obvious that you've sunk a lot of time into the game and like you have a really in depth knowledge. And I've mentioned this 100 times. I'll keep saying it. Like you were one of the first people that I just learned a ton from. Because when I first started, I'd come in and watch your stream all the time and like ask you a million questions and make you answer all my questions. So tell me a little bit about like before we get into like how you started. Just when you look at what you've accomplished so far in the game and what your future goals are, sort of like what is sort of in your opinion the thing that sticks out to you the most? Like what are you most proud of, and then what are you wanting to do, kind of moving forward? Like where do you want to take your game next?
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me that was like the moment that really like my most proud moment was when I got a 45 in any percent. I actually hadn't done any category aside from any percent until like October, this past October. I was just doing any percent. So 2015 and 2016, I was just doing any percent old route. I didn't put a lot of like I was learning it, but I wasn't like, going gung ho through it. I was like aiming to cut the hour or cut the 50. Nothing really, nothing really too fantastic. And then I guess like sometime in the fall of last year, I got a 45, and that was like the goal for me. Like I always saw it as like, getting a 45 is the definition of like great players, and it probably comes back to when that race that I watched so many times. All three runners made it in under 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's nuts. And you're talking about
45 minutes, under 46.
You're talking about 45 old route. That was like the first big thing, right?
Yes, definitely. So I put most of my effort towards getting that, and it was when I got 45 that all of a sudden I decided, okay, I need to start branching out and setting goals for each other category. So I think in October, after I got my 45, I decided, okay, the next thing is I want to get a sub 120 in hundo. And so I spent the next, month or two, and I got a 119.57. And then after that, I said, okay, next thing is let's do, I think it was low ice came next. And then I went into looking at the new route, and I wanted to get a 44 in new route. And then I then said, like, I haven't done RBO. I need to try it. I got a 120, and that's fine, but I'll get back to that at some point. But the thing that I've kind of realized the way I've been doing things is I've always set like a specific goal, and I just work on that one category until I hit that time. So with old route, I got the 45, I'm done. Once I got that 45, I just stopped running it, and I just moved right into hundo, and I just did that until I got my 119. And immediately, like I was 3 seconds into 119, right? And as soon as I did that, I'm like, okay, I'm done with that category. Let's move on. In retrospect, I kind of realized that as much as it's a great way to like give yourself a goal and shoot towards, it also means that I stop playing the category right when I start getting my groove on in the category, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is maybe not the best idea. Like I got a 44 in new route, and immediately I said, okay, let's move on. Let's do RBO now. But like I was building steam at that point. Like if I stuck with old route, or sorry, if I stuck with the new route and kept playing it, I might have gotten a lower 44 at this point, because I had just in the rhythm of it. So I think the next thing I need to do is just start going back through each category and start knocking off, pick a new time and see if I can reach it, really.
Okay, cool, man. So talk to me a little bit now that we kind of understand, where you currently are. Let's talk about how you kind of got started. So, you started early 2015. You got interested. You were watching Krauser and Zost and whatnot. When you first started, like, talk us through what kind of gear did you use? What was your route looking like at first? Like, what were kind of the big kind of major stepping stones for you in terms of, how you approached like reaching like, the sub hour, then the, 50, sub 55, sub 50, so on and so forth.
Sure. The biggest steps for me was actually each improvement in hardware made me feel more in control, essentially. I started playing, originally I was just playing on emulator. And as most of you know, like there's a lot of input lag on emulator. And I got really used to that. It's just, if that's the only thing you play, your timing just feels different. Then I switched, I had my SNES, but I didn't have a Super Metroid cart. So I went out and, spent the money and got a Metroid cart, and I switched to playing on console. And right away, the game just felt a little bit different, and it kind of allowed me to kind of push myself a little bit further. But I was playing on a plasma screen at the time. So the next thing I did was, after that, I said, okay, I got to go find a CRT, because, everyone talks about input lag on CRT doesn't exist. And, again, when I got that new piece of equipment, all of a sudden, oh man, like I feel so much better playing this game now. And, it's like, how could I have been playing this, not on a CRT? How could I have been playing it without a CRT for as long as I've been playing it, And as far as like in terms of what strategies I was doing and, what crutches I was using at the beginning, I remember starting with 5 E-tanks running through old any percent. And I stayed with 5 E-tanks for a long time. I think it was only in the past, definitely in the past year that I swapped to doing 3 E-tanks. I was doing 4 E-tanks for maybe a year before that. But switching to 3 E-tanks was at first a really challenging thing for me. And that was probably the biggest one. Right at the beginning, I remember I grabbed the reserve tank at the beginning. I grabbed a couple of extra missiles in that same room at the very, very beginning of my runs. But aside from that, I don't think I grabbed many more items. I kind of didn't want to have to go back and relearn things. So I kind of started right away. I didn't have Spazer. I didn't get ice early. I went right away X Factors on Fantoon. And it meant that it was slower at the beginning, but once I put in a certain amount of time getting through Fantoon, the game just sort of opened up for me.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that, because there's a lot of different methods for people to use, and most of the time I feel like Spazer is like, for people who are starting old route any percent, that's like a standard thing, right? So that's really interesting that you never got it. So talk me through a little bit about like Fantoon in particular. We talked about it last week. Is in some ways like a big checkpoint. Like if you want to run the game, at some point you got to figure out a way to deal with this boss, because otherwise the difference between understanding how to do it and not is like massive time, right? So like, what was that like going through that process? Because I remember distinctly like just putting a ton of time into it.
Well, I remember. I spent countless hours just practicing it, going through all the patterns, learning patterns, watching different AGDQ runs and seeing what each person kind of does for depending on which pattern they end up getting. I watched DBX's videos a lot, and it was a lot of time working on it. The thing that I found, I think I mentioned this last week in the Fantoon Strat chat, is that once I learned the second round patterns, so there's 6 patterns in the first round, and then there's 4 patterns in the second round. When I started looking at it as, I'm going to learn these 4, as opposed to thinking, oh God, there's 10 patterns I'm going to have to learn, I just said, I'm going to learn these 4. And the advantage to doing the second round patterns is that you only see the first round patterns in the very first round. Every subsequent round, you're going to see the second round patterns. So if you're doing a 3-round Fantoon fight, you're going to see the second round patterns twice. So if something goes wrong, you're going to be seeing those patterns more and more. So the more comfortable you are with the second round patterns, the easier you are going to be, the easier it is to finish the fight. And it also became less daunting because it's only 4 patterns, like as opposed to having look at 6 at the beginning or 10 in total. I said 4 patterns, that's it. And as soon as I kind of got those 4 patterns, taking my time and picking away at the first 6 patterns didn't feel as challenging. I kind of looked at it like, I'll try my best on the first pattern, and if it doesn't work out, I know my next 4 patterns really well. And so no matter what, I'll probably get it in a 3-round.
Gotcha. Okay, so let me ask you this. What is your sort of, let's not talk about category yet, but let's keep it to any percent. What is your favorite sort of section of any percent? Like, let's talk about old route, because that's what most people run. And obviously I know that you have a great new route time as well, but most people are more familiar with old route, especially casually. What is your favorite section of old route, and what would be your advice to a newer runner in terms of, hey, you just kind of started, put some time into this section because it will pay dividends for you in the long run?
Sure. I remember really loving Meridia at the very beginning of my runs. There was just something about, the first couple of rooms have a bunch of really nice wall jumps. And when you're first learning the game, really nice wall jumps sometimes you won't get them all the time, but they were really satisfying to me. You know, the second room where you kind of wall jump up and then wall jump off like the side of the door. You know, it's all those wall jumps were really really satisfying to me. Again, probably coming from being a Batman and a Ninja Gaiden player, I just loved wall jumps so much. So that was probably the section that at first was really interesting for me. I didn't find learning Draygon that hard as well. Draygon was one of the easier bosses. Draygon got really easy, and then Draygon got really hard for a while. I guess I just started overthinking it, and then Draygon got easy again. So Meridia was actually the part I really liked. It just sort of felt like a chill out section to me. You know, you get into Norfair and everything feels up tempo and tense, and you know, there's fire everywhere. But Meridia was like, okay, I can just kind of relax for a little while, do what I do, and you know, it felt, you know, it was just after having to deal with Phantoon, Meridia felt like a breath of fresh air. So for a while, that was definitely my favorite section. After that, I really started loving the first half of Lower Norfair, so from the beginning of Lower Norfair to Ridley was a section I got really, really into. And I think that's a section which has a lot of strats that save, like each room, if you learn one or two new things you can do in those rooms, you can save lots of time. I feel that a lot of people spend maybe a little bit too much time at the beginning of the game. They practice Alcatraz, they practice the climb all the time, but maybe a little bit, not as much time in later section. You know, it's like I'm a musician, and everything comes back to how I would learn a song. And the biggest problem when you're learning a song is that or a long piece of classical music, is you start at the beginning, and the beginning gets really good, and the end is always kind of a dog's breakfast. It's just like, I don't really remember how to finish this part. And it's because you always start at the beginning, you practice through the beginnings. The beginning gets really well practiced, and the end, not so much. So, you know, spending on your late game is probably a very best thing you can do is work on your late game.
That makes perfect sense to me, and I totally agree. Okay, so let me ask you this question. I'm actually kind of interested about this. This is just, you know, nothing to do really with strats or anything, but like, what is your favorite category? Like, what's your favorite one to run? Like, what do you have? Not necessarily that you think is the best or that you think is the hardest or whatever. Just like, what do you have the most fun doing, and why?
Well, I haven't done old any percent in a long time now, and there's a lot of stuff in there I really miss. I've just started doing late croc hundo. I started it yesterday, and it's nice to do a category which has ocean fly in it. Ocean fly was always, you know, my favorite strat. It was always the one I was like, oh, that one's just so satisfying. Like, I found it more pulling off the full halfie. I thought ocean fly there's just kind of a beauty to the strat, and you know, you jump right through the door as it opens. It's just, you know, I loved it. So there's a lot of stuff in old any percent that you don't get to do anymore, and I kind of liked the fact that it is in the natural order of the game, obviously mutated and turned so that you are sequence breaking, of course, but it's not like you're, you know, actually changing up the order of intended bosses, essentially. And that was always really kind of, you know, satisfying to me, that you are playing the game the way it's meant to be played, just with a couple of tweaks through the whole game. I think we lost Kipp.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still here. I think my microphone got messed up. But yeah, I was going to agree with you that I do think that old route is very satisfying. That's a good word for it. Because even though I love new route and I think it's awesome and it's cool to see like what you can do with the game, it is kind of neat to like go in the order, you know, that like you said that they sort of intended, and seeing how fast you can push it. So old route's always going to be fun to run. So I definitely agree with you there. Okay, so before we head to the strats, I'll let you have the final word on anything you want anybody to know about you, and if you wouldn't mind, maybe just give a general word of advice for those who are new, like, you know, in terms of how to approach the game.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can talk a bit about the future for me. I've now got times with each of the 4 major categories that I'm happy with. But I feel I can improve each of them. I could probably take at least a minute off of each of them. Right now I'm aiming to get a 118 in hundo. My ultimate goal is I would, if at some point I can get to a point where I can hit top 10 in all the categories, that would be my final, like, I'm done with this game, is I can at some point hold a top 10 in all the categories, all at the same time. Obviously any percent's going to be the hardest slog for that, but I looked at my 44 run recently, and I think I have it in me to at least take another minute off. So we'll see what happens in the future. I'm really excited about, just pushing my game further down to new players or people who are learning to play the game. It's really important, I think, to figure out what it is that you enjoy in the game. I don't know if I would really necessarily say, oh, you should always, make sure you practice your end game and that sort of thing. Like, for me, something that's always stood out to me is I always love the perfect room. I'm getting a good time is always important to me, of course, but I like a run where I can get all of my stuff landed. And if I start kind of messing up, I just kind of lose my steam and, I end up making more mistakes. It doesn't mean I'm a very consistent player, but I love the feeling of each room kind of flowing beautifully from one to the other. And so that's what appeals to me. So it's kind of one of the reasons I end up resetting more often than not, because I feel I'm not not playing beautifully, essentially. But that's the thing that appeals to me. So if getting a better time appeals to you, you need to figure out what's the important thing that, how you want to practice to get better. But if you just enjoy, like, trying to get a better time as, in happenstance of just learning the game and enjoying, learning new strats, if you don't know how to do the full halfie, like, even if you're not ready to do the full halfie, I think that if that's what's interesting for you, if you like doing these really baller strats and, like, looking like a badass and making Samus look like a ninja, then do that. Find the things that's interesting to you and do it, really. That's it.
Good advice. All right, so let's move on to the strat portion tonight. We are going to be talking about the Botwoon and Draygon fights. And if you don't mind, Moss, because I have no way of showing your music, I'm going to start briefly and talk about the sound cue on the Botwoon fight. And then I'll cut it back over to you, and you can show, whatever method you want, and then show the full halfie as well, because you are way, way, way more qualified to teach that one than I am. And then we'll head over to Draygon and show a few basic things for any percent hundo, and we'll take a few questions, and we'll be done for the night. So let me cut over to my setup real quick. Okay, and let me take the stats down. There we go. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let me make sure that my sound is coming through. I think we're good now. I've had an issue lately with setting up new scenes and having to change a bunch of settings, so I don't 100% know right this second if everything's going to sync. So I'm not really going to be able to... Moss, I'm not going to be able to hear you for just a minute. I'm going to take my headphones off because I need to hear the TV. So I'll let you know when I have the headphones back on. But basically, I'm going to turn up my volume on my PVM for a minute, and then I'm going to talk you guys through the sound cues that I use for Botwoon. These are very standard. I think I learned it from the Oats and Goats tutorial, if I recall correctly. But basically, when I fight Botwoon, I open with an X Factor, which lands 1,200 damage if you get it all, which is basically like he has 3,000 damage, or 3,000 health, which is essentially like 10 supers. So if you get all 4 of the particles, that takes care of 4 of the 10 that you need. Then you got to hit him with 6 supers. So I'm going to show you first and foremost how I use the sound cues to get the X Factor. And again, I got this basically straight from one of the Oats and Goats tutorials. But the music in the Botwoon room is in like a 6/8 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what you can do is if you enter the room and get in the right spot and face left, and start charging like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shoot 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then your X Factor will go off at the exact time. Okay, so let me kind of show you how I do that real quick. So just in your brain, count along with the music. Okay, so I didn't jump quite accurately right there, but let's try again real quick. There it is, okay? And what I'm trying to do, like, let me kill him real quick just to get him out of the way. One thing that I do when I do the X Factor is I basically enter this room and I'm standing roughly with Samus's foot, like her foot that would be like forward for her, so to the left, or I guess for y'all it'd be this way. I try to put it right around this little line and this dot right here, okay? And that way when I jump, I'm right in the middle of this hole. And I try to jump and get my feet, basically. Like, I always hold L. That just makes me more comfortable. I try to get my feet right around the middle of this hole. Like that. Okay? Let's try it again. Okay? So basically it's a, 1, 2, 3, shoot 2, 3, turn 2, 3, jump 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, shoot 2, 3, turn 2, 3, jump 2, 3. And that should get it. It's just a nice little musical rhythm. Let's try this one more time. Boom. Okay? And at this point, you can basically just run over here and select supers. And depending on what pattern he gives, he starts off with 3 different patterns. One of them kind of swoops down here, like, from here down. It's the easiest one to deal with. There's another one that kind of goes like down, but then over to the right a little bit more. And then there's another one that goes up top. Now, technically, you can get a 1 round with all of them, but I find that, the first one is the easiest by far. The other ones can be tricky, especially the top one. I have a hard time sometimes getting a 1 round with it, but if you're lucky enough, he might just stick his head out of a hole and you can pop him with some more super. So let me try to do a whole fight here. No matter what pattern I get, I'll just adjust to it. So I'm 2 down, and that got it. All right. So that top pattern is really tough for me, and a lot of times I'll miss some shots, but you just do the best you can. I'll do it one more time here, and then I'll turn it over to Moss. I'm 1 down. There you go. So I'm sure Moss will be able to get at least a few of the times where he goes in the low pattern. The best thing that I do is once I pop the X Factors, I just kind of run over here and crouch, and you can basically kind of like follow his shots all the way up to this hole. But that's the basic premise of how you get the X Factor, which is going to do 40% of all the damage that you need for him right away. So, Moss, I'm putting my headphones back on. At this point, I'm going to mute my mic and cut it over to you and let you talk through some things.
Okay, great. So Kipp's hit pretty much all the important things. So yes, to kill Botwoon, all 4 X Factors plus 6 supers will kill Botwoon. So let's just go through let's go through the 2 different parts of it, one after another. So the X Factors, Kipp has already kind of mentioned it. If you're counting with the beats to the song, pushing the fire button on the 4th beat of the first bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, shoot 5, 6. Okay, so on the first bar of music, beat 4, you're going to press shoot. Now it's important you face left, because something that's interesting about X Factors and beam combos in general is if you turn around, you actually delay the time for the out. So if I don't turn at all and just hold charge, you notice within 3 seconds the X Factor comes out, or maybe 2 seconds, I can't remember. But let's try the same thing. I'm going to hold charge and I'm going to spin left to right. Oh, hold on, I've got a duck. I don't have it. Hold on, let me turn moonwalk off for a second. Okay, So I'm going to turn this on, and if I go back and forth, you'll notice it takes a really long time for that X factor to come out. So it took a long time for that to happen. Something to note, if you are planning to use Moonwalk, this turnaround, you want to make sure you're ducking when you before you press the charge button, so that way you can actually turn around. When I first started doing Moonfall, I started doing Botwoon fights, and I, instead of turning around, just started moonwalking back, and so that's not going to work. So it's very important that after you shoot on beat 4, you have to turn around, and that delays the X factor just enough that the timing should hit perfectly on Botwoon's head. So Kipp said that he jumps on the second beat 4. So 1, 2, 3, shoot 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, jump 5, 6. I actually jump on the next beat. I jump on beat 5 of the second bar. 1, 2, 3, shoot 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, jump 6. So I do it on beat 5, not on beat 4. Both will work. I just find that 5 works better for me. It is a little bit later, and when I jump, I try to jump to the height where Samus's body just is right in the just sort of the peak of the jump is right in the hole. And that way, because you're sort of, when you reach the peak of your jump, you kind of float there for an instant. It makes it more likely to X factor right at that spot. Okay, so I'm going to actually, let me just kill a bot once, and then we'll talk a bit about positioning after that. Okay, I'll just save some. Oh, let's load Botwoon into the, and then we'll kill Botwoon. Excuse me, everybody. All right. So I crouch. Okay, so I just want to get him out of the way so we can talk about this room. So my positioning, I come somewhere just, left of the center of the hole at the beginning. I stand roughly around here. Duck, so I can turn around with Moonfall on. I charge the shot, I turn around, and I stand right around here. Now, it's kind of hard for me to explain what I use as a reference. I kind of use, if you look at the wall in the background, I don't even know what that is, the sort of coral that's in the background kind of goes in vertical row or in vertical columns. And I kind of just use the column where my gun is in line with. I use that as my reference for where Samus's head is. That's what I use. It's sort of just a little bit to the right of the center of the hole. The reason I do it there is because as Botwoon comes out, generally Botwoon moves a little bit to the right. So if your timing is a little bit late, you're more likely to hit Botwoon because he's moving this way. If you're more to the left of the center, it's possible that you won't hit him with all of them. Okay, so that's part 1. Charge on beat 4, turn around. I jump to about this height, roughly. So just, you kind of notice that the peak of my jump is right on the hole, and I just release right there. And that allows for a good timed X factor. As soon as the X factor is moving inwards, I start moving. Usually while I'm falling down, I start moving to the right in order to position myself for the next part. Generally, I kind of come to somewhere around here, maybe even back here. I don't go all, I don't actually have an exact location for where I come to shoot Botwoon with the missiles. Somewhere in this region, though. Okay, so there are 4 patterns we have to deal with. Let's assume that you land your X factors properly. If anyone has any further questions about the X factors, let us know, but I think we pretty much covered it. We'll maybe talk a little bit at the end about if you don't want to use the audio cue, there are some other strats. Okay, so there's 4 patterns. Two of them, actually 3 of them come along the bottom, and then one of them I call the top pattern. It goes up. It goes up sort of this way. I'm going to let my dog out. He has to go to the bathroom. Hang on one second, guys. He's just moaning at me. All right, let go. Okay, excuse me. So, what I call the high pattern is when Botwoon kind of flies in this direction.
Yeah.
You'll notice it immediately. It's the easiest one to tell because Botwoon is heading upward and to the right. It's probably the hardest pattern to get in one round. The main reason is that Botwoon kind of heads this way, and then Botwoon kind of swerves around to the left like this. And when Botwoon does that, his head is kind of protected by his body. You can't hit the body, you can only hit the head, obviously. So it's really easy to, he ends up here in this hole. So when he starts turning around like this, he gets protected for a very long time. That's the hardest one to do in one round. I'll see if I can show you how to, we're just going to have to try a couple, see if we can, probably the best way is eventually you guys can go back and if you're interested in how to do each pattern. So we'll just do each one a couple of times and see what happens. Okay. All right, so one thing you might have noticed with that, Botwoon kind of comes over this way, turns around, and heads back this direction. This is a good pattern because you got a lot of time with this one. I got in, I think, 3 hits before Botwoon actually hit me. I wanted to take damage because with this pattern, when Botwoon heads back this way, if you take damage, you can kind of stand inside of Botwoon and just like stand right near the head and just unloads the remaining supers. It takes a long time with this pattern because he kind of comes back up and ends up back in the same hole he started in. Let's just do a couple more. Hopefully we'll be able to get all of them and we can talk through them. I kind of have to talk about them after I've done them though. Oops. So I kind of messed it up a little bit there. And actually wouldn't have that many supers, but if you get into trouble, generally what happens, if you kind of get 3, 4, maybe 5 supers, often the next thing that happens is Botwoon's going to just poke his head out of any of these holes and start shooting at you. You can usually land 3 supers at that point, or maybe like 4 or 5 missiles. So if I'm out of supers at this point, I'll just start unloading missiles. I always come into Botwoon making sure that I have at least 60 health. Botwoon does 30 damage in any percent, and I guess the same thing. When you're wearing Gravity Suit, he does 30 damage. So if you are at 60 health, you can take 1 hit and you won't get health bombed. I try not to get health bombed in this section. Let's try this again. So these are kind of unreal situations. 399 health you would not have in this situation, but. Oops. Wow, that was bad. Okay, so you get into desperation. The best thing you can do is stand on the left side because Botwoon cannot hit you on this side. And at this point, usually you'll just start using hard shot. I'm not actually shooting very well at this point. You can learn the other patterns after the first round, but I never did. I just kind of adapt and improvise on it. I learned the 4 patterns at the beginning, and that's pretty much it. Generally, I find that I can get it in 1 round, and be 1 round, and then when his head pokes out, I kill him. So you notice I hit 4 times. I came over here, ducked, because often when Botwoon kind of comes down here, it's easier to hit him when you're ducked, you're crouching. So I shot 4, I took damage, I stayed inside of Botwoon during the invulnerability frames, and I just hit him 2 more times. You have a lot of time to get back to this one. That pattern's not one of the hardest. Still haven't gotten the top pattern, so let's see if I can do that one. Hopefully we'll find it. Ooh. Okay, that was not really well executed, unfortunately. So the one I was doing, though, generally, this is the one where I want to try to execute it as perfectly as possible. I come over here. I try to hit Botwoon with 3 supers. The third one I shoot as I'm jumping upward. And generally, if you're in roughly this position, if you hit him with the 3rd super, you'll take damage. And then again, while invincible, I'll kind of jump and shoot on the way down. Again, Botwoon kind of curls around, and it's easy to get. He kind of protects himself with his body. So if you're invincible, you can kind of jump inside of that and hit him. So let's just do a couple more. See if we can get all the different patterns. Wow, I mistimed that. So that looks like I shot a little too early. I must have shot just a little bit too early there. So you notice again, I just sort of stayed inside him at that point. I only hit him 3 times before he turned around. I got him with three while I was invincible. Okay, great. This pattern, it's really easy to hit him all the way along the bottom. He kind of heads up this way and ends up in this hole up here. You can, if you only get 5 hits, usually you can kind of do a big jump and shoot him right before he gets in this door in this hole at the end. So if you only get 5 before he starts heading around this way, you can usually get him with a 6-1 here. In theory, you can maybe get him with 2. You go bam, bam, oh, bam, bam, like that, and hit him with 2 at the end. Maybe a little harder to do. Okay, let's just do it a couple more times, and then we'll move on. So I only got 5 that time, unfortunately. Oops, I totally missed that shot. Okay. So you kind of saw I actually missed the second super, but then after the third one, I kind of jumped up and took damage from him. Again, take damage, stay inside him. It's why it's really important to have at least 60 health. Let's do it one more time. Oh, I think I'm not moving over enough at this point. I must be timing my location with that one. I'm noticing my second super's not hitting very well. As you'll notice, that top pattern is kind of the hardest one. It's the one that you want to put the most time into practicing because it is definitely the hardest one. With this pattern, I call it the W because Botwoon kind of comes this way, jumps around, does another little, like almost makes a W shape, and then ends up over here. You have a lot of time at the very end. He does like a big sort of spin around here, and then heads over into this hole here. So you got a lot of extra time with that one. The hardest one, like I said, is the top one because you don't have you have the least amount of time with that one. All right, we'll do one more, and then we'll move on, I think. Great. That's a really simple one. I came to roughly around ducked. The last shot I just did as an angle up. That's it's a pretty good location to move to, where I did right there. Ooh, I just missed that last shot. But I'll just finish him off with some missiles at the end, and that's still a pretty fast fight. It wasn't a 1 round, but it was like I call that a 1.5 round. If you can get him with after he does the snake pattern and then he goes into the shooting pattern, I call that a 1.5 round. Maybe no one else does. All right, last thing. Let's talk a little bit. I don't use this strat, but there is a way of not using an audio cue. What most people do is they start right here. They run full speed into the room. You run all the way to the right side, turn around, and you shoot right as you hit this wall over here. That's your timing for that spot. And then the timing for the jump, I'm not really too aware of when you time the jump. I think it has something to do with when you start flashing. And maybe a little too early. So just after you start flashing, time that you're doing it. If you don't want to use an audio cue, that's the way that most people tend to do it. Anyways, I actually reverted into using an audio cue. Okay, so the downside with the audio cue is like I often listen to music when I'm playing this game, and this is the point. Like once I hit Meridia, I have to just turn down the music, turn up the game volume. So between door transitions, I have to make sure I'm not like I have the game audio on by the time I reach Botwoon. One last little thing, as the the wall here is just being destroyed, you can kind of hop over the wall at the end and get out the door. If you get out the door before the wall has finished being destroyed, then Botwoon comes back. This doesn't necessarily matter for most categories, but in new any percent, you come back through this room. And I've done it. I was on really good pace, and I killed Botwoon, and I ran out, jumped through this, and ran out the door. And this wall hadn't finished being destroyed. And so when I came back through after having a really good Draygon, PB pace, I come through, and this wall is back. And I can't fight Botwoon because I'm on the wrong side of the wall. So it doesn't happen often, but, if you notice that you make this jump through, like just over the top of the wall perfectly, make sure that you don't just rush out the door, because if you're doing new route, I guess it doesn't matter in old route, but it's something to be aware of. I didn't know that until it happened to me, so don't let it happen to you. Kipp, is there anything else you wanted to add with Botwoon?
Yes, I'm just going to talk for just a very brief moment about the tournament right now. A lot of people have been watching the Super Metroid multi-category tournament. One of the newer categories that, it hasn't become like super popular, but at the same time you see a lot more people running it lately, or at least, trying to figure stuff out about it, is mini boss RTA. So you have to kill every mini boss in the game, to complete the game. And so there's basically two routes to do it. Generally speaking, just about every player that I know moves faster doing the Kraid route, where you get Varia and then you do Botwoon last. And so that means you have to do Suitless Meridia to kill Botwoon last, as opposed to the Gravity route, which you have to go up. It's like new route at first. You got to kill Phantoon, get Gravity Suit, and then you do like a different route. So I'm going to talk through just a minute. And Moss, I'm going to put my headphones down for a second, so you can even mute your mic for a minute if you want to. I'm just going to talk through my method of fighting Botwoon in this manner when you only have various suit on. And I guess technically you could apply a similar thing to RBO, but I use the same kind of audio cue, but I start firing on beat 1 of the third measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, boom. All right. So I'm gonna I'm basically gonna position myself. I'm gonna position myself where my foot is on this dot right here, and so that my toe touches this line. 1. And sometimes I can get all 10 in, and sometimes you can't, but even without being able to move, it's a lot trickier to get a 1 round. But basically, if you position yourself right here, okay, and you put your, your forward foot on this dot, when you crouch, you'll notice that your foot goes up a little bit. If you have it right around here on this line, you can basically start firing your first super on the second beat of the third measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wait, fire. Okay? And at that point, depending on the pattern, you can typically take like 1 hit from him and still get all of the supers in. Alright? So, let's see. Kipp should get an expert on the show to talk about Suitless Botwoon Mini Boss RTA, like maybe a world record holder. Well, unfortunately, I reached out to some people, but I couldn't find anybody qualified to come teach this part. So I had to kind of suck it up and do it myself. But let's try this again. All right, that's the worst pattern, right? And at this point, especially in Mini Boss RTA, like once he kind of does that and you're kind of screwed, you kind of need to wait for him to be in certain positions. And honestly, if he does this in like a PB attempt, you just kind of have to start shooting him. Like that has actually happened to me several times. In fact, some of my PBs even had fights like that. But hopefully he'll give you a better pattern. So it's really hard to get a 1 round. It's definitely possible, but it's much harder to do than in like old route. There it is. That's the best thing. You basically just, you know, as soon as you fire him, you fire a bunch of shots crouched. You basically let him hit you. You jump through him with the iframes, and you get the 10th one in. I'm gonna try like one more time and see if I can get a good pattern, and then we'll move on to the full halfie and Draygon. Got him. All right, so at this point, I'm going to put the headphones back on. Moss, if you are there, you can feel free to take over. I will cut it to you whenever you like, and we'll talk about the full halfie.
Yeah. Just the one little thing about this gravity fighting Botwoon. It's a good thing to know is that this left side, which I called sort of the safe zone, if you don't have gravity suit on, if you run to this wall and turn around, when you don't have gravity on, when you turn around, you actually move further to the right than when you don't have gravity on. So, or when you have gravity on, you don't come as far to the right when you turn around. So in this situation, I don't have gravity on, and I turn right. I actually come a little bit further to the right, and that means I'm actually not entirely safe. You can take damage. So if you're really low on health, and you want to come to this wall and be safe, without gravity on, it's the safest thing is to actually ball up and turn around in ball form. So if you notice, if you look at my when I turn right, you notice how far out Samus is. If you look at her right heel is just touching the edge of the wall there. It's much further out than you would be with gravity on. But if I ball up, tap right to turn around, and then unmorph, you notice that my foot is entirely inside that wall. So it's just a good way to, like, if you're like really low on health and need to go to the safe zone, this is a good thing to kind of, you know, be aware of. I died in an RBO run because I thought I was safe over here fighting Botwoon, and I wasn't. So just something to be aware of. Okay, let's talk about the full halfie and the halfie. The reason we're talking about it here is, you know, this is the gauntlet. A lot of people call this is not the actual, but a lot of people call this like the boss gauntlet. And right in the middle of these two bosses is this room. So I think the full halfie gets a lot of praise in terms of like being a really hard strat, and it is a hard strat for sure. It's not the hardest though. Actually, I'm going to turn on. Let's turn on my no, sorry, config my Shine Spark timer. Okay. All right. So if you don't do the halfie, I would suggest you spend a little bit of time trying to look at learning, because the halfie is actually not very hard. You don't have to be a great wall jumper. You don't have to be like Sweet Numb and, you know, wall jump like a beast to get up there. I'll show you ooh, I might have. So I just took my time on the wall jumps. I did 4 wall jumps. You can actually probably do 3. Just taking your time. Ooh, yeah, I'm just going to reload this with, kind of loaded it a little too late into this room. Just bear with me, guys. Oops. You can make a halfie with 3 jumps. They don't have to be like super crazy fast. Get out of my way. Okay. God. All right, let's just go with it. So you notice I still had 25 frames, and it's probably kind of a bad, but yeah, I'm gonna go and reload it in just a minute. But you notice how long I kind of took those wall jumps. So you can, oops, man, it's actually kind of hard when 1, 2, 3, and it still worked. So you can take really long, big wall jumps here if you're going for the halfie. It's not actually that hard. So I still had 15 frames to make that work. So if you're interested in doing the half, it is entirely possible for most people. Something to kind of, you know, remember about this. If you're interested in doing the full halfie, it does require, you know, you do have to be a little bit faster on wall jumps. You don't have to be like crazy fast though. You can, I do 4 wall jumps. A lot of people do 5, but you can do 4 wall jumps and make it up without a problem. I know Sweet Num does like 6 or 7, but most people I think are either doing 4 or 5. In terms of how many wall jumps, I would say just do what feels best to you. I find that the timing for the wall jumps for 4, it's actually pretty slow. You don't have to worry. So, okay, I am going to reload this because I'm just never going to land that timing. Kind of used to just doing, yeah, let's just do that. Kind of used to just where I save the game. Wow. Sorry, guys. All right. Just die. Okay. That's better. Okay. So when working on the full halfie, the big thing to remember is, yeah, like just working on doing, you can do really big wall jumps. It doesn't have to be like really fast, tight wall jumps. Man, I just can't timing this thing right now. Okay, that door transition sort of threw me off a little. So you notice I kind of just did, they weren't really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. You don't have to be really fast at when you're doing it. The most important thing I found with learning the full halfie is that the first jump, the initial jump off the ground, a lot of people jump and start wall jumping immediately. They kind of go from right here and start jumping up as quickly as possible. You actually get a lot of height with your first jump. So I jump, I usually jump somewhere in range. I wait until I'm around here to start wall jumping. And usually you have more than enough time. So somewhere around there looks about right. I can't time this. That's fine. So you notice I jump actually pretty high up. I do 4 jumps, 1, 4. The 4th one, I try to make sure I'm out of the water, a good deal out of the water. So, maybe like 2 tiles out of the water. Usually that's a good place for me in terms of where I find it's the best for that down grab. 2, 3, somewhere around there. That worked fine. So I have 15 frames at this point. You generally need about 10 frames to make it into the next room. So to make the full halfie. So if you can get through this room with 10 frames to spare, you don't want to hit the door though. That's unfortunate. Then you can, land the full halfie without a problem. 16 is plenty. So 9 frames sometimes works. 10 is pretty safe. If you have 12, the thing that's interesting is if you have more than 10 frames, you won't need them. You won't use them because if you jump too high, you're going to hit the wall anyway. See, that was 13 frames as opposed to 10 frames. So you need exactly 10 frames. And if you have more, that's kind of the way I kind of look at it. So I'm not going for really fast times. I'm just trying to make sure I can make it through the door with at least 10 frames. So I'm not really rushing myself. That's kind of the big thing. When I'm doing the full halfie, I spent a lot of time when I first started learning it working on knowing when to bail and knowing when to do the halfie. Because sometimes if you kind of miss time, your charge. So I did it I jumped, if I charge right, I'll immediately switch into doing the halfie. And it's just good to know because, okay, I'm going to do the halfie. Okay, so that actually should have shot a little bit earlier. But, you charge a little too early, okay. And I still had time to do the halfie at that point. So the big thing is, you have to kind of, if you're going to go for the halfie or go for the full halfie. But sometimes you have to decide mid-climb. And so it's good to kind of, if you notice that you didn't, do one of your wall jumps perfectly, and you don't want to go for the full halfie, being able to, in your practicing bailing out and going for the halfie as opposed to the full halfie is a good thing to start practicing as well. The down grab at the top is probably the most important thing. So for me, I find that if I do the wall jump, the last wall jump roughly around this, let me kill this guy, roughly around this tile right there. So sort of like the second tile out of the water, somewhere around there. And if I find I have enough height to both shoot and do the down grab at the end. It is a little bit challenging though, definitely. It takes a lot of practice. I put in hours of practicing before I got full halfie consistently. Yeah, and not bonking the door. You can actually bonk the door. If your wall jumps were good enough, you can bonk the door and make it through. That was 19 frames, so I ended with 9. Again, 10 frames is about how many you're going to need. But you can do, like, let's go as slow as possible. Still at 5 frames. So you notice, like, a halfie, it's not... Still at 12 frames. So I'm not really doing it, really fast. That was probably too slow, but... Still at 3 frames with a really bad start. 1, 2, 3. So just remember, you can do it with 3 if you're having trouble with your wall jumps. You don't need to do a lot of them to do the halfie. It's I don't think it's as hard as some people maybe give it credit for. Sloters makes a good point. You need 2 of the 3 following things: fast wall jumps, a good down grab, and not bonking the door. Yes, if you have the first 2 down well and you bonk the door, you're going to be fine. And if you don't bonk the door and have a good down grab, if your wall jumps are not perfect, you will still make it through the door. Yep, that's it. I mean, it requires a lot of practice, and I don't want to spend much time on it other than that. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Kipp?
No, man, I think that's really good information. Let's talk about Draygon. So real quick, while you're on your way over there, I'm going to show the little, like, really beginner-friendly 2-tap that you can do in Draygon, and then after that, I'll turn it over to you for, like, the full explanation of the fight.
Okay.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to show you, I've mentioned it before. I think I might have even done it on another Strat chat before, but I'll just go over it very briefly. A lovely bunny asked about down grab. A down grab is basically where, if you look at Samus here, when you press down and you get into that animation, it compresses her hitbox. And so if you press down, you can land on a ledge faster and like on the edge of it and start moving quickly. So when you're going for a trick like the full halfie, which is like very, very tight, down grabbing while that door is opening and then immediately running into the room can literally be the difference between getting it or not in terms of the frames that you save. So that's kind of what a down grab is. But anyway, so this Draygon thing, Draygon is one of those fights that I feel like is a huge checkpoint for people when they're first learning the game. It was for me. When I first started running this game, I was still getting, grapple beam, I'm talking about when I very, very first started. So I was getting grapple beam and just trying to kill Draygon that way because I couldn't figure out a way to kill Draygon very fast with my, mechanical skill at the time. But once you get to the point where you're ready to start skipping, oh, no problem, lovely bunny. Once you're to the point where you want to start skipping grapple beam, you really need to start figuring out how to do short charges in the Draygon room. And the method that I came up with when I was learning how to do this is super, super easy, very friendly to beginner players, and kind of a good introduction to how short charging works. So basically, just to kind of quickly explain, if you hold dash, which dash for me is Y, if you hold dash and just run across the room, you never get a blue suit, right? Because you're moving too far, too fast, while the game is checking different, like different parts of your animation to see if you have dash held to give you the blue suit. I think you got to get to 4. So basically what you can do is a short charge where you basically tap dash as you pass this little pipe right here. And then you tap it and hold it a second time as you pass this pipe. So you're going to face away, you're going to turn, tap, and then hold. And that'll give you enough space, about right over here somewhere, to press down to get the spark, which you can then use to spark into Draygon, right? So let's go over it again, right? Tap, hold, down. And it's really important that you understand that you need to tap, okay? And I mean literally tap, as quickly as you can. Because the longer you mash it or hold it, the further Samus wants to go with her speed. And you'll run out of horizontal room, right? So tap, hold, boom. So again, pipe, boom. Now you can do obviously the same thing going from left to right. This time the visual cues are these bones right here. and then this crab, like the beginning of this crab, okay? So tap, hold, boom. And so at this point, like literally, I would recommend, especially when you're new, if you want to use this method, coming in here, killing Draygon or either having her dead, and then just sitting here and going back and forth over and over again so that you get to feel what it's like. This means that you can short charge in this room at any time, and it's not too complex. You don't have a ton of ways to mess it up since you're only doing a minimal amount of button inputs. And this will notice, like, I still haven't lost a charge, right? Like, I've been going back and forth this whole time, and I'm just using the visual cues. So this is a good way to learn how to do your short charges at first, and then obviously you can open your fight against Draygon with one, and then you can even immediately kind of head back this way, and if she gives you the one cycle, you can hit her again, and then if you feel comfortable, you can wait for her to go up, and you can run underneath her and get the last one. But even if you just learn it enough to do the very first one, okay? Like, even if you just learned enough to do the opener, right? And you hit Draygon, not even with an X Factor, but just with a spark, you can relatively easily do like a quarter to a third of her health, something in that ballpark, which will make everything a lot easier. And I also believe that, if you can get that first one, you can definitely at least get the second one, probably. And then at that point, you could just run up underneath her and start firing stuff, okay? So I know that's very beginner-friendly. The pro players will do stutters and 2 or 3 taps there and kind of get their short charge in a quicker way. But until you sort of master that ability, which is something that's very hard to do, this is a very, very good introduction, to how to fight Draygon, with some level of ease as a newer player, which means that you can kind of put, your time into other areas and keep improving there. I still use this method. Sometimes I'll stutter, sometimes I won't. Just kind of depends. But, it works for me. I get plenty of one-round Draygons if I'm able to execute it. So just something to... Streamer, how do you 2 stutter 4 tap? I wish I knew. I learned something new about stuttering today. But anyway... that's just a general method to get started with, and now I'm going to let Moss kind of show you how to actually perform these sparks and how to set up the X Factor. So Moss, I'm going to turn it back over to you, bud.
Great. Okay, so the X Factor at the beginning is a really interesting part because similar to Botwoon, Draygon, the first thing Draygon does is always exactly the same. Meaning Draygon enters the room at the beginning at a certain time. It's always the exact same time. It always starts on the left, moving to the right. And the way that Draygon moves is always the same based on your position. What I mean by that is if I stand right here at this crab, Draygon will always swoop in the exact same manner if you're standing here when he enters the room. So if you stand in the same place every time, you will always get the same result. It won't. The problem is that, if you're in slightly different position, you move slightly differently, your timing is slightly different, it won't be exactly the same because Draygon will have adjusted and moved in a different way, and you have to kind of adapt because of that. But the X Factor ends up being a very there's a very stable way of being able to hit Draygon with at least 2 particles of an X Factor, hopefully 4. If you're good at shine sparking, you really only, getting 2 particles hitting him is usually enough. If you can get all 4, it makes the fight a little bit easier moving on. I can only really explain the way that I do the strat. Everyone has like a slightly different way of doing this X Factor strat. The most famous is probably Behemoth, who has this crazy rain dance that he does. You have to figure out A, when you're going to start running, B, when you're going to start charging your X Factor, C, what position you're going to end, and D, when you're going to jump in order to Shine Spark through Draygon. Because you have to both charge a Shine Spark, charge an X Factor, and jump and Shine Spark at the same time as the X Factor hits them. It's a lot of stuff going on. But if you have a consistent way of doing it and you do it the same way every time, you should get a pretty consistent result. Let me just get rid of Draygon first, and then we'll just I'll explain a little bit. Before I do though, this I use as a way to when I start these 4 baby Draygons. When the first one touches this wall, that's when I start moving. So I wait for these babies. They're going to kind of move around, and they touch the wall right there. That's when I start moving. Again, everyone's going to have slightly different positions for where they start moving. I know Oates waits until when standing here, one of the babies touches Samus's gun. That's his signal to start running. So everyone's going to have a slightly different one. That's what I use. So I use that when I start. I'm going to finish off Draygon first, and then we'll just do it while he's not in my way. So I'll charge my X Factor, Shine Spark through him. I think I got 3 out of 4, which is good. That was really good luck. Okay, it looks something like that. So I do in the first round a stutter 2-tap. You can do a 2-tap. And if you do a 2-tap, your timing for your shouldn't be any different. So what I do is I start running when the baby hits the wall. I do a stutter 2. So stutter 1, 2. So I tap on the 1, and then I hold on 2. Stutter 1, 2. Or stutter, tap, hold. I find that actually if I do a stutter properly, usually the first tap is somewhere around where this first pipe is, and the second tap is where this one is. I find if I'm just running forward, I actually have to tap a little bit later without a stutter in order to get the right timing for a 2-tap. The interesting thing is, though, that when you hold your run button the second time, that's the same cue I use to charge the shot as well. The second run input is at the same time as I push shoot. So the second time it's shoot and run together. So it's stud or run both. So you'll notice that if I do that properly, I usually get a Shine Spark somewhere before this pipe. This is kind of a good reference, though. I sort of charge around here. I continue to hold my charge. I turn around, and I come back to this crab. Okay, so that's the beginning of it. We'll just save right here. Stutter 1, 2. Charge. I come back to the crab, and I crouch. So crouching does 2 things. It firstly lowers where the X factors first originate, but it also means that Draygon's swooping pattern is actually lower because your hitbox is a little bit lower. So I found that Draygon actually moves a little lower because of that. As soon as I see the X factors on the screen moving forward, I stand up and I jump into the air to the right as soon as the X factors cross my body. So it's as the X factors converge, that's when I jump up and to the right, jump this way a little bit. I turn around quickly and I Shine Spark to the left. And that's essentially it. You have to kind of learn what height you need to get to in order to Shine Spark through Draygon's head. So that's how I kind of get stand, jump. And I just kind of generally by the time I start jumping, I can start seeing Draygon on the left side of the screen. I can see Draygon's head. I just try to aim for Draygon's head, essentially. Just try to aim for Draygon's head. That's just fine, I think. Okay, so that's kind of how Kipp might have a slightly different setup. I learned this from Zost's tutorial from ages ago. I think he has a different setup at this point, but that's what I used. Okay, so that's the X Factor and 1 Shine Spark. The remaining Shine Sparks, I do a stutter 3-tap for the rest of the fight. I don't do a stutter 2 anymore. I feel more comfortable with stutter 3-tap, but you can get away with a stutter 2, especially the very last Shine Spark. If we're doing this ideally, the first Shine Spark with the X Factor goes this way. The second Shine Spark goes this way as Draygon appears. And then as Draygon heads this way, the third one, you run underneath Draygon, charge here, jump up, turn around, and shine back across Draygon. This third one, I find it's really important to do with stutter 3 to get this consistent. If you just do a 2-tap here, you usually end up right here against the wall, and it's kind of awkward if you're against the wall to jump up in a spin jump, avoid Draygon who's coming towards you, and also Shine Spark through him. So I find a stutter 3, it puts me right around here, and it gives me enough space to run, kind of bounce off of this wall, turn around, and Shine Spark through them. So the third one is the one where you really need a stutter 3, but I use a stutter 3 for the second and third one. Stand, jump, Shine Spark to the side. Now I'm going to get set up here. This is good luck. That was a stutter 3. One. Oops, and I messed that up. So for the last Shine Spark, I kind of wait for Draygon to start moving. He kind of starts swooping down when he's throwing his goos, and then as he starts rising, so I'll show you over here. Oh, shoot. I'll do it on the next one. As Draygon starts to rise, that's kind of when I start running on the third one. Maybe a little low. Okay, so I'm going to wait for Draygon to start heading up. That's kind of what I use as my reference, and then just go right through his forehead again. Draygon does take a lot of practice. Draygon I found was like the most fun to practice though. Like I can sit happily and just practice Draygon. It doesn't feel like a grind to me to sit and practice Draygon, but that does require you to get really good at your short charge. I'm going to post, I have done it before, but I have a tutorial on doing a stutter 3-tap. And so if you're interested in that, I'll post it in the chat. And I have some tips on doing a consistent stutter 3 in there. Ideally, you want to have blue suit at the end. And blue suit's kind of a hard one to explain, but maybe Kipp can explain it a little bit more. Is there anything else you wanted to add to Draygon?
No, not really, Moss. I was just going to kind of let you cover the fight. You can talk about blue suit, or I will. It just depends on what you would like to do.
Sure. I mean, blue suit, essentially what it is that your Shine Spark gets interrupted. If you kill Draygon with a Shine Spark, you kind of stop sparking to the side and you drop right where you were. And the game doesn't really know how to, it's expecting you to hit the wall and stop and make that sort of, shutter animation after you Shine Spark, right? It's expecting that sort of, the collision. So since it doesn't get that collision, it actually retains the Shine Spark. So you retain blue suit. Blue suit's kind of an interesting one. It does allow you to get another halfie on the way back. And generally you're going to get it if you kill Draygon with the Shine Spark. There are a couple of things to watch out for with Draygon. When you Shine Spark Draygon at the end, when you've killed Draygon, you always want to make sure you release all the directional buttons. Like release after you Shine Spark, release the D-pad, because if you continue to hold the D-pad, you'll start taking a shitload of damage, and it's very easy to die if that happens. I'll show you what happens. I'm going to try to remember. My instinct is to release the D-pad, but let's see if I can do it. So in through the forehead, get ready. Didn't happen much, but you might have noticed I knocked down a lot and took a bunch of damage on the way down. You can be killed if you do that. So you want to be careful. If you're going for the Shine Spark, release your D-pad at the end. Also, if you Shine Spark too early, I think it has something to do with these turrets. I don't remember exactly because it's no longer a problem for me where I set up my Shine Spark. But I think, let me see if I do it over here. It didn't happen exactly, but there's something about, I can't remember. Something about if Draygon is inside this turret and you Shine Spark into it, you can take a lot of damage from that as well. Doesn't happen as much anymore, but because of the setup sort of more to the right. But it used to be something that people had a lot of trouble with. So I won't say it's... There you go, hold left. Yeah, if you hold left, right is what gives chain damage. Yes, that's right. Static, I was talking more about, you'll notice sometimes if you, Shine Spark into the turret, there's, a bunch of explosions that kind of happen if you do it through Draygon. I can't remember exactly what the story is, but I remember when I first started learning it, I took a bunch of damage because I Shine Sparked into the turret. But it happens there, but it doesn't do damage on the second. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's something like that. Anyways, so I don't know if there's much else to really say about Draygon. It's a lot of fun to practice Draygon. You really have to get your short charges down. A stutter 2 is Holding down reduces chain damage, but I'm not sure. Oh, that's interesting. Static says, yeah, so holding down reduces chain damage. It might just be a placebo effect, but who knows? So it's a lot of fun to practice. You really have to get your short charge down, though. A 2-tap works fine. A stutter 2-tap gives you more space. A stutter 3-tap and start, especially at the end, gives you a lot more flexibility. The only other thing I wanted to maybe is triggering a shine spark with the angle button versus using the up button. Now, Kipp and I have already had a contentious talk about this, but I was actually watching Oates talk about Draygon, and Oates uses up to trigger shine sparks typically, but I think he uses angle as opposed to the up button to trigger shine sparks for Draygon. If you're finding that you are goop sparking, meaning you spark right up vertically when you're trying to shoot to shine spark through Draygon, I personally find it really hard to do a jump, turn around in direction, press up to trigger the shine spark, and then shine spark horizontally through. Because if you're holding jump and up at the same time, you'll often shoot straight up. I find it really hard. If you're finding that you're sparking up a lot, again, this is a preference thing, but you might want to consider trying to do it with the angle button. I'm a huge advocate for the angle for shine sparks. Kipp is the opposite, so he'll tell you the opposite story. But it's if you are finding you're having trouble with the up button, maybe try working with the angle button. You might find it easier, or you might not. I think that's about
it. I'm actually not really in love with it either way. I mean, I personally am more comfortable with up for me. I actually tried learning both ways, like early on, not only in Draygon, but in other areas. And just for whatever reason, with my brain, it's a little bit more intuitive to press up. But for some people, R works better. So it kind of just comes down to your preference. Yes. I do think, generally speaking, you would probably have less likelihood of, accidentally gooping or whatever with R, but I have seen people still accidentally diagonally spark off into the air, trying to pull off different moves. So it just kind of comes down to your preference. But yeah, so what we're going to do, everybody, is we're actually going to conclude right there. We wanted to cover Botwoon and Draygon, and we got through that. Sometimes we'll do a Q&A session just depending on how much time we have. We usually try to keep these things under 2 hours. We still have a little bit of time, but at the same time, I have a big match tomorrow in the Super Metroid tournament, so I'm trying to get to being able to practice as much as I can. So we're pretty much going to cut it there. Moss, thank you so much for showing everything this evening and allowing me to interview you. It was a lot of fun getting to know your sort of past with video games and how you got into Super Metroid. So do you have anything else you want to say before we head
out? I don't think so. No, I had it was a great night, and it was nice talking, and nice to share my story a little bit. We mentioned it last week. If anyone has questions that they have over the week, feel free. Kipp's got a Discord, SM Strat Chat page, and if you want to post ideas for things you want us to talk about, we would love to see, to have a little bit more community involvement with that sort of stuff. So if you have ideas, feel free to post them.
That's a great point, because basically if people have questions for things they want us to cover, it'll not only possibly give us something to build a whole episode about, but at the same time when we have the Q&A sessions, it's a lot easier for us to kind of know a couple people asked about this, so we can get it prepared. But Moss, welcome back, man. Glad to have you back. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. Good luck with I believe you mentioned that you are now running Late Grapple Hundo, is that right?
Yeah, I just started it. I found actually the big thing for me was learning to do the robot skip in the bowling alley, and I found that I got it pretty consistent relatively quickly. And so as soon as I figured I could do that, I was like, okay, it's time to start doing this. We'll see. I'm hoping to get a 118 at some point. The interesting thing for Hundo is that since I did Hundo, way back, and I got a 119. I've learned RBO, I've learned low ice, I've learned new route. Gotten to a point where I'm just better at the game and, faster and cleaner. So going back to Hundo at this point, I think with the, certain amount of practice, I'd do.
Cool, man. Well, good luck. I'm sure we'll be talking to you, and here in a couple weeks we'll have another episode. So, guys, that's going to be it for tonight's episode. I'm going to play the outro sequence of music, and then I'm going to cut stream for a few minutes, but I'll be back within about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm going to do a stream tonight, getting ready for my match tomorrow. I'm going to do some 80% runs and 100 runs and stuff like that. So I'll be back within about 10 to 15 if anybody wants to come hang out. Moss, are you going to be running anything tonight?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start doing some under runs.
Cool.
Tonight.
So TrueMoss will also be running, and if you want to, real quick, you can pop in your. Yeah, you know what, Slutters? I think I will. I think I'll join the 80% weekly race. But TrueMoss, if you want to pop your link to your channel in the chat so people can get to it easily and give you a follow or hang out. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next time, and good night.
Okay, Kipp. Good job tonight. So we'll, enjoy your night. Maybe we should get in touch and talk. Okay, see ya.